My name's Emma Davis, and I'm 18, just starting my freshman year at Ohio State University. Growing up in a little town called Willow Creek, Ohio, life was always quiet, simple, like something out of those old Americana postcards. Picture a place where everyone knows your name, where summer means barbecues and fireflies, and winter's all about hot cocoa after shoveling snow. That's home, or at least it was, until college turned everything upside down. It's always been just me and my dad, James. My mom, Sarah, left when I was 5, vanishing like she was never really here. No note, no explanation, just gone. I don't remember much about her, just flashes of her perfume and the way she'd hum while cooking. Dad never talks about her, but I can see the hurt in his eyes when her name comes up. He spent his whole life making sure I didn't feel that hole she left. He's my rock, my best friend. The guy who'd drop everything to take me fishing at Lake Erie, or cheer louder than anyone at my high school softball games. Dad's 42, a former Marine turned mechanic, with this rugged look that makes people do a double take. He's got these broad shoulders, dark hair with a few silver streaks, and tattoos from his service days peeking out from his t-shirts. He's the kind of guy who can fix anything: cars, broken chairs, even my broken heart when I'd cry about Mom. We've always been tight, like 2 peas in a pod, or maybe more like 2 survivors clinging to the same lifeboat. He'd grill burgers in the backyard, crack dumb dad jokes, and we'd watch Reds games on TV, yelling at the screen together. Those moments were everything. Starting college was a big deal for me. I'm the first in our family to go, and Dad was so proud, even if I could tell he was nervous about me leaving our little world. Willow Creek's safe, predictable, but Columbus? It's loud, chaotic, full of new faces and possibilities. Moving into the dorms, I felt this mix of excitement and fear, like I was stepping off a cliff. I'd come home most weekends, and Dad would be waiting with that big smile. But I could sense him getting lonelier each time. He'd ask about my classes, my friends, trying to sound casual, but his eyes said he was scared I'd outgrow him. Looking back, I guess that's where it all started. This shift, this pull between the life I knew and the one I was chasing. I didn't know then how far things would go, how one moment could change everything. But that's my story, or at least the beginning of it. Me and Dad, our little house on Maple Street, and the world that was about to turn us inside out. Columbus hit me like a freight train. One minute I'm in Willow Creek, where the biggest excitement is the county fair, and the next I'm dodging skateboarders on campus, surrounded by lecture halls and kids who seem to know exactly who they are. Ohio State was this whirlwind of new faces, late-night study sessions, and flyers for every club imaginable. I felt like a kid in a candy store, but also like I might get lost in the aisles. Classes were intense, biology labs, English lit, all that stuff. But it was the freedom that got me. No curfew, no one checking if I ate my veggies. For the first time, I was on my own. I started making friends, like Jess, this loud girl from Cleveland, who dragged me to my first college party. Those parties were something else. Picture frat houses with sticky floors, red Solo cups everywhere, and music so loud you feel it in your chest. I'd never seen anything like it back home. At first, I just watched from the sidelines, sipping a Coke, but Jess kept pushing me to loosen up. "Live a little, Emma," she'd say, handing me a drink. So I did. A beer here, a cocktail there. It wasn't about getting wasted. It was about feeling alive, like I was part of something bigger. But every time I'd come home for the weekend, Dad was there, waiting. He'd have the porch light on, maybe a pizza on the table, acting all casual. "How's school?" he'd ask, leaning back in his chair. But I could see it in his eyes. This quiet worry, like he thought college was stealing me away. I'd tell him about my classes, my friends, but I kept the party stuff vague. He didn't need to know about the late nights or the time I danced on a table to some awful pop song. Still, he'd look at me like he was trying to memorize me, like he was afraid I'd change into someone he didn't recognize. It wasn't just Dad's worry that got to me. I started feeling this tug of war inside. Part of me loved the rush of college, the music, the laughter, the way I could be anyone I wanted. But another part missed our quiet nights, just me and him, eating ice cream and laughing at his terrible puns. I'd catch myself thinking about him during those parties, wondering what he was doing back home. Was he fixing up that old Chevy in the garage? Watching the game alone? It made my chest ache, like I was betraying him by having fun. I didn't know it then, but those feelings were building up to something that'd turn our little world upside down. One Friday night in October, Jess convinced me to hit up a Halloween party at some off-campus house. The place was packed, guys in cheesy vampire costumes, girls in glittery witch hats, and a playlist blaring everything from Drake to old-school Nirvana. I threw on a last-minute cat ear headband and let Jess paint whiskers on my face. A couple of rum and cokes later, I was buzzing. Not drunk exactly, but loose, like the whole world was softer around the edges. I danced with strangers, laughed too loud, and for a few hours, I wasn't the small-town girl missing her dad. I was just free. By the time I got back to Willow Creek, it was past midnight. The town was dead quiet, just the hum of crickets and the glow of streetlights. I fumbled with my keys, still a little giddy, and stepped into the house. Dad was in the living room, sitting at his laptop, the soft light from a floor lamp carving shadows across his face. He looked up, and I swear, even in my hazy state, I noticed how strong he seemed. Those broad shoulders, the way his t-shirt hugged his arms, the faint tattoos curling out from the sleeves. "Late night, huh?" he said, his voice calm but with that undertone of worry he couldn't hide. I grinned, maybe too big, and skipped over, tapping his shoulders from behind like I used to when I was a kid. "Boo!" I giggled, the alcohol making me bold. He jumped a little, then laughed, that deep, warm laugh that always made me feel safe. "What are you up to, kiddo?" he asked, leaning forward, catching the sweet tang of rum on my breath. I shrugged, swaying a bit. "Just living it up, Dad." He stood up, steadying me with his hands on my shoulders, and that's when it hit me. His touch was warm, firm, like it could hold the whole world together. But his eyes, God, those eyes, they were soft, full of love, but there was something else, something heavy, like he was seeing me in a way he never had before. I froze, my giggle fading. My heart started pounding, not from the drinks, but from this weird electric feeling in the air. I looked up at him, really looked, and it was like seeing him for the first time. His sharp jaw, the silver in his hair, the way he filled the room. "You okay?" he asked, his voice quieter now. I nodded, but I couldn't shake it, this pull, this thing I didn't want to name. I tried to laugh it off, waving a hand. "You're always so serious, Dad. Chill out." But as I turned to head upstairs, my legs felt shaky, and not just from the rum. Something had shifted, and I didn't know if it was me, him, or both of us crossing some invisible line. I stumbled upstairs, my head still spinning from the party and that weird moment with Dad. My room felt too quiet, so I headed for the bathroom, thinking a hot shower might clear my mind. Like always, I left the door cracked open, a habit from when I was little, when Dad would check on me to make sure I didn't slip or something. The water hit my skin, steaming up the tiny room, and I tried to focus on the warmth, the sound of it pounding against the tiles. But my thoughts kept drifting back to him, his hands on my shoulders, the way his eyes had locked onto mine, like he was seeing straight through me. I don't know how long I stood there, lost in my head, but then I caught a glimpse of movement through the steam. Dad was at the door, just standing there, his silhouette soft in the dim light. His face was gentle, but there was this look in his eyes, part concern, part something else, something that made my breath catch. I should have felt embarrassed, but I didn't. Instead, my heart raced. And before I could think, I said, "Come in." My voice sounded steadier than I felt. He hesitated, like he was wrestling with himself, then stepped inside, grabbing a towel from the rack. "You're soaked," he said, his voice low, almost shaky. He moved closer, slow, like he was afraid I'd bolt. He started drying my shoulders, his hands careful but firm, the towel brushing my skin. It was the kind of thing he'd done 100 times when I was a kid. But now, it felt different, heavy. Like every touch carried a weight we both felt but couldn't name. I looked up at him, his face so close, I could see the lines around his eyes, the strength in his jaw. My heart was hammering, and this voice in my head screamed, "This is wrong. Stop." But I couldn't look away. His hands moved to my hair, smoothing the wet strands, and when his fingers grazed my neck, a shiver ran through me, electric and unstoppable. I don't know who moved first, maybe me, maybe him, but I leaned in and our lips met. It was soft, tentative, like we were both testing the edge of a cliff. I thought he'd pull back, but he didn't. His hands slid to my shoulders, pulling me closer, and the kiss deepened, steady and sure, like it was something we'd both been waiting for. Everything else, the party, the rules, the world outside, melted away. It was just us, wrapped in steam and silence, crossing a line we could never uncross. My heart felt like it might burst, not with guilt, but with this overwhelming need to be near him, to hold on to this moment. When we finally pulled apart, his eyes were dark, searching mine. "Emma," he whispered, his voice so tender it broke something inside me. I knew right then nothing would ever be the same. The air in the bathroom felt thick, like the steam was holding us in place. My heart was still racing as Dad took my hand, his touch gentle but sure, and led me out into the hallway. The house was quiet, just the creak of the floorboards under our feet. He guided me to his room, the one place in our little Willow Creek house that always felt like his sanctuary. Tools scattered on the dresser, a faded Marine's cap hanging on the wall. He eased me onto the bed, careful, like I was something fragile, and for a moment, we just looked at each other, the weight of what just happened hanging between us. He sat beside me, close enough that I could feel the warmth of him. His hand brushed my cheek, slow, like he was memorizing me, and then he leaned in again. This kiss was different, slower, deeper, like we were sinking into something we couldn't escape. My hands found his shoulders, strong and solid, and I let myself get lost in him. Every touch, every breath felt like it was stitching us together, like we were more than just father and daughter in that moment. There was this voice in my head, faint now, whispering that we shouldn't, but it was drowned out by the way his fingers traced my arm, the way his eyes held mine, like I was the only thing in the world. We didn't rush. It was like time stopped, the soft glow from the streetlight slipping through the curtains, wrapping us in this private little universe. When he pulled me closer, his arms around me, I felt safe, but also alive in a way I'd never known. It wasn't just about the physical, though that was there, electric and undeniable. It was like we were sharing something deeper, something that had always been there, waiting. I could feel his heartbeat against me, steady but fast, and I knew he was feeling it too. Afterward, we lay there, tangled in the sheets, the silence heavy but not empty. My head rested on his chest, his hand resting lightly on my back. I kept waiting for guilt to crash over me, but it didn't. Instead, there was this strange peace, like we'd found something true, even if it was wrong by every rule I knew. "Emma," he said finally, his voice soft, almost a whisper. I looked up, and his eyes were so open, so raw, like he was letting me see every piece of him. "You okay?" he asked, and I nodded, because words felt too small for what was happening inside me. I knew we couldn't stay like this forever. The world outside, Willow Creek, college, all the things that made us who we were, would come creeping back. But right then, In that room, it was just us, and I didn't want to let go. I pressed closer, breathing him in, and wondered how we'd ever go back to the way things were. The room was still, just the faint hum of the world outside creeping through the window. I lay there, my head on Dad's chest, his heartbeat steady under my cheek, like a rhythm I could always count on. The streetlight cast soft shadows across the walls, making his room feel like a bubble, cut off from Willow Creek, from college, from everything that wasn't us. I kept waiting for the world to crash in, guilt, shame, something to tell me we'd gone too far. But all I felt was this quiet warmth, like we'd found a piece of truth no one else could touch. Dad shifted, his hand still resting on my back, and I looked up at him. His face was calm, but his eyes were deep, like they held 1,000 thoughts he wasn't saying. "Emma," he said, his voice low, rough around the edges. "You okay?" I nodded, my throat tight. Words felt too small for what was swirling inside me. Love, fear, this strange certainty that what we'd done was real, even if it didn't fit anywhere in the world we knew. "Are you?" I whispered back, searching his face. He smiled, just a little, the kind of smile that always made me feel safe. "Yeah, kiddo, I don't regret what's true." I let that sink in, his words settling like stones in my chest. True. That's what this was. Not some drunken mistake, not something to bury, but it was ours, and only ours. I propped myself up, meeting his gaze. "What happens now?" I asked, my voice barely above a breath. He reached out, tucking a strand of hair behind my ear, his touch so gentle it made my heart ache. "We keep going," he said, "like we always have. But this," he paused, his eyes locking on mine, "this stays between us, our secret." I nodded, feeling the weight of that word, secret. It wasn't heavy like a burden. It was precious, like something we'd carry together. I slid closer, resting my head back on his shoulder, and we stayed like that, wrapped in silence that said more than words ever could. I thought about our life, grilling burgers in the backyard, cheering for the Reds, all the little moments that made us us. They'd still be there, but now there was this too, a hidden thread woven into everything. The future was a blur, full of questions I wasn't ready to face. What would college be like now? How would I look at him across the breakfast table? But right then, in that quiet room, none of it mattered. I closed my eyes, his breath warm against my hair, and let myself hold on to the moment. We'd crossed a line, but it was our line, drawn in love and sealed in silence. Whatever came next, I knew one thing for sure. This was ours, and no one could take it away.